Honest question, what is the reason for changing the day of worship for Saturday to Sunday? So when we read in the Old Testament, the Christians used to meet on the day of the Lord, but they also used to go to the temple on the Sabbath. So for instance, just pull it up for you. Oh, the Lord's Day. Sorry, let's do it. Let's do it the other, not the day of the Lord, because that's the day of day of judgment. So, for instance, in Revelations chapter 1, verse 10, the apostle writes, "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, when I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet." Or in 1 Corinthians, no, that's talking about the day of judgment. Thing about search engines is they pull up the words, so I'm getting lots of references that just talk about day. So, and there is two terms that are used. Right, there we go. In Acts chapter 20, verse 7, on the first day of the week. Now, we know what the first day of the week was. The first day of the week is a Sunday, according to Judaism, because the Sabbath is a Saturday. So that's the last day of the week. On the first day of the week, when we met to break bread, Paul began to speak to the people, and because he intended to leave the next day, he extended his message until midnight. So we see that from the New Testament times that the church was marking the Lord's Day as a special day, and they would also probably, especially the Jewish Christians, would have marked the Sabbath as well. And so when the Gentile believers became Christian, obviously they're not Jews, so they wouldn't have marked the Sabbath, but they would have marked the Lord's Day. Now, the church is given two things. It's given authority and it's given freedom. So it's given authority to bind and to loose things like festivals and days of special markation. That's within its authority, its remit, to bind and to loose those things on earth, and they will be bound and loose in heaven. So it will be permitted. So the church began to mark the Lord's Day as a special thing. And within the freedom of the gospel, you can do that. You can mark one day as special, or you can mark every day as the same. You have that liberty within the gospel. But most Christians were following. The Christian community began to coalesce into what we understand as the ancient churches of our time. So that would be the Catholic Church, the Catholic structure of the church, which then split into your Coptics and your Eastern and your Roman in later history. But with this authority and with the discipline of the church and from the precedents of the earliest community, Christians began to worship on a Sunday. And that's true. I'm not a Jew. I don't have Jewish culture. There's nothing wrong with a Jew marking the Sabbath and the Sunday as a Lord's Day and treating them in this way. Indeed, the Coptic Church does exactly that. It still marks the Sabbath, the Saturday, as a special kind of day, obviously within New Covenant understandings. But most Gentile Christians don't do that, though they have the liberty to do if they want to. And I know some Reformed Christians that I know personally who still mark the Sabbath day as a Sabbath, and they still mark the Lord's Day as the Lord's Day. You have that liberty. But in history, most Christians didn't. They have that liberty. And so Christians ended up having their special day on the Sunday. And so that is why Sunday became the day of worship. But I want to point out to you, Chief Priest, that being a Christian, we are supposed to worship our God at all times and in all places. You know, we're meant to be offering our soul and our body to be a living sacrifice to the Lord our God, which is our acceptable act of worship as a sensible people, which means that we are not meant to have a day that is a day of worship. Our life is supposed to be worship. The Sunday is the gathering of the congregation. It's the gathering of the people to celebrate the joy of the resurrection, to remember the things that God has done amongst us. And if you want to keep a Sabbath, the Saturday, as a particular day of rest and prayer and devotion, you have that liberty. But you don't have the ability to make that an obligation onto others. Whichever fellowship you follow, they have the authority to set aside certain days as a disciplined day for the congregation. And if you're a committed member of that fellowship, you should observe those particular days. So, for instance, we've got Thanksgiving Day coming up in America. Thanksgiving Day originates from the Christian Puritans. And the Puritans used to, by collective decision of the elders, decide that certain days would be Thanksgiving days to praise God for something. And that's what happened in America. That was the origins of the Thanksgiving Day. The Harvest Festival is an example of a Thanksgiving Day. In Germany, I think they actually call it a Thanksgiving Day. In England, we call it the Harvest Festival, but it's actually a Thanksgiving Day. In Canada, they've got a Thanksgiving Day. So it's about rediscovering the history of these things, to brush away some of the cobwebs and some of the crusty accretions that are built up on some of these ideas, to get back to a more clearer understanding that actually there is no tension between those that honor Saturday and those that honor Sunday. And after all, why would we not want to commemorate the resurrection? Okay, I hope that answers your question.